Hey, seventh grade. So our learning target for today is I can calculate percent of change. So I can, sorry, I'm just trying to get used to this highlighter here. I can calculate percent of change. You should be on page 40. So our first definition really is what is percent of change? Percent of change is the percent that a quantity changes from the original amount. So whenever you hear that there's been a change in price, the change in number, some sort of change happens, this is the formula that you're going to be wanting to use for today. So the actual formula that we use is percent of change is this proportional relationship. So we take that we have the amount of change divided by the original amount. And then we would take cross products and we would use the idea that we know percentages out of 100 cross products hand methods, and we would solve. But I'm going to introduce to you a little trick, what I call the Mrs. V trick. So we're going to use that same idea of percent of change. We're still finding the amount of change in the numerator, but what we're going to do is we're going to take what I like to call the big number and we're going to subtract the small number. And then we were going to divide by the old number, the original number. And we still have a percent on the other side. So I want you to be thinking about that this right here is really the original number. Sorry, I'm trying to get used to this pen here. The original number is the old number. I like to call it, in my little tricks of things that I do, I like to call it the B minus the O over the S. And of course, then we just have a percent on this side. So B minus O over S is what you're going to hear me say over and over in our lesson today. So we're going to start with some things that we know that increase in the real world. So some increases that we have in the real world. Well, we know that we have an increase in gas prices. We can have an increase in gas, but we can also have a decrease in gas prices. Gas prices kind of go up and down, up and down. We can have a change in clothes. We have an increase in clothes when we've talked about before that we have a markup. When we have a markup situation, we're going to jack up the price. Or we could have a decrease in the clothes when we have a discount situation with clothes. We also can have situations where we are talking about maybe a change in house prices. Maybe you wanted to sell your house for a certain amount and you didn't get as much as you wanted. Or maybe you got more than you wanted, which doesn't happen very often. But also there could be a change in car prices. Now cars tend to decrease in price. But then you have other things that you would have maybe an old car that would increase in price. So these are just the idea of like some old cars, old-fashioned cars maybe would have increase in value over time. Most cars depreciate or go down in value. So just some real world things that we're going to talk about today in our work. So moving down here, we are going to go ahead and do example 1. So in example 1, when I started driving in 1993 is when I got my driver's license. So I was in 10th grade, got my driver's license. The cost of gas was $1 per gallon. Today, as of this morning, the price of gas was $1.89. $1.89. So I left that blank there because the change of gas prices change all the time. So I like to leave that blank so that we can always fill it in. So what is the percent of change since I've been driving? So we're going to use this formula, or the way that I see the formula is I like to think of it as B minus S over O, and then we have a percent on this side. Sorry, I'm just trying to get used to this pen here, so sorry if it's hard to read. The big number that we're talking about, the biggest of these two numbers here is $1.89. So we have an $1.89 minus the small number. The small number is $1 over the original number, or what happened first. Well, what happened first was $1, because when I first started driving it was $1. That happened over the course of time first. So $1 is the original number because it happened before today. This is just a percent on this side. So the trick for today's work is that we are going to do cross products, but before we can do cross products, we're going to have to do this subtraction here. $1.89 minus $1. That's going to happen. That's going to be our first thing that we're going to do. So we're going to go ahead and take that $1.89 minus $1, and we're going to have 89 cents over that spot. Over $1 is equal to X over 100. At this point, then we take cross products in solving. So should we be multiplying $1 times X? Multiplying the other side as we've been doing through this whole unit, cross products in solving. As we take cross products and solve, we find out that it's an 89% increase in value. So we have an 89% increase in value. That's called percent of change when we have a change in price. So in example 2 now, we're going to do that same idea. Now, if I'm going too fast, you should pause the video, or have your teacher, if you're in class with a sub right now, you should have the sub pause the video if you need to catch up on your writing there. In example 2, Skyview currently has 813 students. Next year, our population is projected to be 776, which shows that you have a decrease. We're asked to find what is the percent of change. So we're going to do B minus S over O is the percent. What percent on the right side? B is big minus S is small over the old or the original thing that happened. So we have B minus S over O is equal to what percent? So of our numbers, the biggest number that I have here is 813. So we're going to put 813 in that big spot. We're going to put 813 in that big spot. Sorry, trying to get the hang of this pen here. 813 minus 776. Minus 776 over the original. Well, what happened first was the 813 students happened first. Because that's currently. Next year hasn't happened yet. So 813 happens first because it's right now over the course of time. We're going to take cross products and solve it. Before we do that, we're going to have to do that subtraction. So in my calculator, I'm going to type 813 minus 776. So everybody should be typing 813 minus 776. And when you do that, you get 37. So cross products are going to kick in. So we're going to take those cross products and we're going to solve. And as I start to solve, so you should be doing 37 times 100. On the other side, hand method kicks in, divide by 813, copy, paste, and we end up with 4.55%. And that is a decrease in percent, 4.55% decrease. So that is what, when we're trying to figure out how many teachers we need for next year, how many classes we're going to need, we know that we have a 4.55% decrease in the student population, the percent of students that we're going to be losing for next year. Okay, 7th grade, meet me on page 41. Everybody should be on page 41 now. And we're going to go ahead and solve this first problem. For this first problem, it says, my 8-passenger sports car was $23,000 when I bought it in 2006. Now, I call it a 8-passenger sports car. You might think of it as a minivan, but it was not a minivan in my world. The value of the van is now probably worth $3,000. So clearly we have a change that happened. Anytime we have a change that happened, we use this formula we're talking about today. So we have big minus small over old is what percent? So the big number up here is 23,000 minus the small number is 3,000. We need to figure out what was the original price of the car, or the oldest price of the car, which happened first. Did the 23 happen first, or did the 3,000 happen first over the course of time? Well, the 23,000 is the oldest price because that was the price of the car when I bought it, or the original price. To take cross products on this now, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do this subtraction, which is 20,000. Then our cross products kick in, so we're going to grab that variable x and multiply that diagonal. And then we're going to grab that 20,000 and multiply 100. Using the hand method then, we continue to solve that process. Give you some time to type that in. Everybody should be typing that in right now. So as you type that in, your correct answer should be 87% decrease in value. So my car decreased in value 87%, or 86.96%. I guess I would prefer that you have the decimal version of this instead. I'll take either, but I'm going to go ahead and highlight here in put a purple box around the answer that I'm going to prefer, that you have an 86.96% decrease in the value of my car. So for our work today, what we talked about is change, percent of change. So when you have a value that changes over time, whether it's a price, it's the amount of people, it was one thing and it changed to another thing, you have what's called a percent of change. When we do that, there's a formula that we use. The way that I explain the formula is that we do B minus S over O, and then we have the percent on the other side, cross products and solve. Big minus small, divide by original, cross products and solve. For your homework tonight, you need to finish the rest of page 41 and all of page 42 due tomorrow. Have a fabulous day, 7th grade.